where children were born, not for life, but as vessels to keep their mother from aging. The movie begins by showing a woman named Amelia, who is taking care of her twin children. Amelia lives alone in her large house located in Portugal. Her house is situated deep in the forest, far from any nearby settlements. Amelia loves her twins dearly and is extremely careful in taking care of them. While Amelia is putting one of her babies to sleep, the other twin is left in the living room. Then, a mysterious man and woman sneak into Amelia's house. Their only goal is to kidnap Amelia's twins, though their true motive remains unknown. They split up. The woman will take the baby in the living room, while the man will take the one being put to sleep by Amelia. The woman successfully kidnaps one of the babies with ease and then waits outside for the man to finish his part. However, after waiting for quite some time, the man never comes out. It turns out that when the man was about to take the baby, Amelia quickly noticed him. She chased after the man, and before he could escape from her house, Amelia's eyes suddenly turned white. Then she seemed to do something to the man that made him unable to flee with her baby. Meanwhile, the woman waiting outside was shocked when she saw Amelia running toward her car while holding one of her children, a clear sign that Amelia had managed to save one of her twins. The man had clearly failed to complete his mission. Panicked, the woman fled, taking the other baby with her. Later, she abandoned the kidnapped child at Woodland Orphanage so the baby could be properly cared for. Years passed. The story then shifts to a man named Edward, the twin son of Amelia, who had been kidnapped and left at the Woodland Orphanage. Edward spent most of his life growing up there. When he became an adult, he began living independently. As an orphan, Edward often felt a deep curiosity about the identity of his biological parents. Because of that, he contacted the orphanage to ask if they had any information about them. After waiting for a long time, Edward finally received a call from the orphanage. Unfortunately, they told him that they had no information about his biological parents at all. The news devastated Edward, who had hoped so much to one day reunite with his real family.
And retrieved your documentation from the Woodland Army. Speaking to Edward Ipus.
Yep.
Later, Edward celebrated his birthday with his girlfriend, Riley. Riley gave him a special gift, a DNA reader device called Ancestry.
What's this?
Collect a microdroplet of your blood. Ancestry.
To use it, Edward only needed to provide a drop of his blood. The device, connected to an app, would automatically search for other people who shared the same DNA as him. This was an alternative way for Edward to possibly find his real family. Excited and hopeful, Edward immediately tried the device, and then just had to wait for confirmation from the Ancestry system.
Thank you. Ancestry is...
Did you feel myself?
That night, Edward suddenly woke up from a strange nightmare. When he checked his phone, he was shocked, yet overjoyed to see that his DNA had been confirmed to be a 100% match with a man named Manuel. The result meant that Manuel and Edward were biologically related. In other words, they were brothers. Edward immediately searched for Manuel's contact information and called him right away. During their conversation, Manuel explained that he had a twin brother who was kidnapped when they were babies. The incident had left Amelia heartbroken over the loss of one of her sons. Despite that, Amelia never stopped searching for her missing child, Edward. After so many years of longing, Manuel and Amelia had finally found Edward. Having waited for this precious moment for so long, Edward finally had the chance to reunite with his family. Without wasting any time, he began planning a trip to Manuel's home in Portugal. Riley, his girlfriend, decided to accompany him on the journey. After a long flight, Edward and Riley continued their trip by car.
Do you know where you're going? Come on, this is like your national...
Along the way, they stopped to ask directions from a local woman selling goods by the roadside. At first, the woman was friendly toward Riley, but when Riley showed her a picture of Manuel's house, the woman's expression suddenly turned cold and unfriendly. She rudely told them to leave, leaving Riley confused by her reaction.
Yeah.
Olá.
House.
Casa da Amélia.
Vamos embora.
Okay.
Ida embora!
Fortunately, Edward and Riley eventually found the right road and safely arrived at Manuel's home. Their arrival was warmly welcomed by Manuel, who had been waiting for them in front of the house. Edward was overjoyed to finally meet his long-lost twin brother, and Riley was equally moved by the emotional reunion. Manuel invited them inside and gave them a brief tour of the house. The family estate was enormous and surrounded by lush tropical forest with wide open grounds that made the place look even more impressive. The interior was beautifully decorated and neatly arranged.
Get home, brother. I'm sure you will, because this is our great-great-grandmother.
As they explored, Edward and Riley were captivated by a portrait of Amelia. She looked breathtakingly beautiful in the photo. However, they couldn't meet her yet because Amelia was said to be resting. That night, as Edward slept, he was once again disturbed by a nightmare. He woke up in the middle of the night and was startled to see Manuel quietly entering his room. It turned out Manuel wanted to take Edward to meet Amelia. Edward got up and followed him to her bedroom. When Edward finally saw Amelia in person, he felt a strange mix of emotions, mostly fear, because she didn't look like how he had imagined her all these years. Amelia's face had clearly changed due to plastic surgery. Despite that, Edward was overwhelmed with joy and emotion to be reunited with his mother after so many years apart. Amelia, too, was delighted to see Edward and expressed her admiration for how handsome and grown-up her son had become. The next morning, Edward eagerly shared the good news with Riley, who was thrilled to hear about his first meeting with Amelia. Later, Riley spent her time sketching Manuel's pet bird. While she was drawing, Amelia, who happened to be strolling around the house, approached her. They started chatting about various things, from Riley's hometown to the history of Amelia's house.
Perfect pair.
The land of potatoes.
It doesn't compare to this place.
Yet, for some reason, Riley began to feel uneasy around Amelia. She couldn't explain why, but something about the woman made her feel uncomfortable and afraid. As the atmosphere grew tense, Riley decided to end the conversation and went back to her room.
Magic into science. You have very...
After using the bathroom, she happened to overhear a serious conversation between Amelia and Manuel. Curious, Riley quietly listened. Since they were speaking Portuguese, she used a translation app on her phone to understand what they were saying. What she heard deeply confused her. Amelia was talking about how she couldn't wait to be young again. Even stranger, Riley learned that Manuel still shared a bed with Amelia despite being a fully grown man. Suddenly, Amelia mentioned that Riley had been eavesdropping on them, which startled Riley so much that she immediately fled the area. She quickly went to Edward and told him everything. It didn't seem normal at all that a grown man still slept with his mother, especially in such a huge house with plenty of empty rooms. Yet for some unknown reason, Manuel chose to sleep beside Amelia. The next day, Riley tried to call one of her friends, but the signal in the house was extremely poor, making it impossible for her to make a phone call. While exploring one of the rooms, Riley found a large box filled with old photographs. The photos looked ancient, yet they appeared to be pictures of Edward's ancestors. However, the longer Riley examined them, the more she noticed how the ancestors' faces looked strikingly similar to those of Manuel and Amelia when they were young. Even the male ancestors bore a strong resemblance to Edward and Manuel. Before Riley could investigate further, she was startled by Manuel's sudden appearance. She quickly closed the box and apologized to him for touching something without permission. That night, while Riley was sound asleep, she began to wake up after hearing the faint sound of a baby crying. It made no sense. There shouldn't be any baby in that house, since only adults live there. Following the sound, Riley eventually encountered Amelia. But to her shock, Amelia's body had become young again. Suddenly, Amelia grabbed Riley's hand tightly. But then Riley realized it was all just a nightmare. When she woke up in the middle of the night, she was horrified to see Amelia again, this time with her eyes glowing white as she rummaged through Riley's suitcase. Slowly, Amelia crawled toward her, terrifying Riley, until she woke up once more, realizing it was yet another nightmare. At first, she thought it was all just dreams, but when she looked at her suitcase, it was open, and her clothes had been neatly folded. She clearly remembered leaving it closed and messy before going to sleep. This could only mean one thing. Amelia really had entered her room during the night. The next morning, Riley decided to go for a jog in the forest near Amelia's house. Fortunately, there was a signal in that area, so she called her friend to talk about the strange things happening in Edward's family.
People sound like freaks.
Yeah. Like she had come in the night and folded.
Meanwhile, Edward was wandering around the house, confused as he couldn't find Riley anywhere. As he explored the property, he became curious about an old door that led to a small room. He faintly heard the sound of a baby crying from inside. Gathering his courage, he entered to check it out, but instead of finding a baby, he was shocked to see a man writhing in pain inside the room. The sight startled Edward so badly that he immediately fainted. Luckily, Manuel arrived and helped him, bringing Edward to a meditation room. There, Manuel offered him a cup of tea to help calm his mind, then asked Edward to close his eyes for a moment. As Edward did, Manuel began communicating with him telepathically, showing fragments of his childhood memories. Gradually, terrifying visions began to form. Memories of Amelia's face, pale and horrifying, her eyes glowing white as she stood surrounded by corpses. When Edward opened his eyes again, he was stunned to see that Manuel had somehow turned into Riley. It was as if Manuel had used some kind of illusion or mental trick. Manuel, still speaking through Riley's form, told Edward to stay calm and explained that what he was experiencing was a special gift they both possessed as Amelia's children. Edward, still dazed and frightened, couldn't fully understand what Manuel meant. Meanwhile, in her room, Riley was desperately searching online for information about Amelia's house. What she discovered shocked her. The house once belonged to a Portuguese witch said to possess the power to regain her youth either through incestuous rituals or by consuming her own children. Shortly after that, Edward entered the room. Riley immediately urged him to leave the house with her as soon as possible. She told him that his family was strange and that she felt deeply uncomfortable staying there any longer. But Edward's response was unexpectedly harsh. He refused to leave, speaking to her in a cold and aggressive tone. It seemed as though his family had already influenced his mind, filling him with obsession and loyalty toward them. Feeling heartbroken and frightened, Riley firmly declared that she would leave the place on her own, even if Edward chose to stay behind.
I don't feel comfortable here. If we leave now...
Fuck you, Riley.
The next day, Manuel invited Edward to join him and Amelia in dancing together.
Você balançar sozinha.
The three of them began to dance with joy and laughter filling the air. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Riley was exercising in the forest near Amelia's house. As she chatted with her friend over the phone, she kept walking until she unknowingly reached the main road. There, she ran into the same woman who had once rudely shooed her away when she asked for directions to Amelia's house, the woman named Vera. Curious and determined to find answers, Riley approached Vera and asked why she'd reacted that way before. Instead of avoiding her this time, Vera invited Riley to her home. Inside, Vera showed Riley a photo of her daughter, Fila, and Fila's boyfriend, a man named Arthur. Vera began telling a dark and unsettling story that her daughter had once shared with her. According to Fila, Arthur's mother, Amelia, was a Portuguese witch who had lived for hundreds of years. Using dark magic, Amelia possessed the power of eternal life and the ability to become young again whenever her body began to age. However, to regain her youth, Amelia had to commit an unspeakable act. She was required to mate with her own son. Once she gave birth, her body would automatically rejuvenate. If Amelia gave birth to a son, she would make him her partner, but if the child was a daughter, she would consume the baby to restore her vitality. Even more horrifying, if she gave birth to twin sons, Amelia was required to mate with both of them in order to fully regain her youth. This explained why Amelia had not yet returned to her younger form. She had only been with Manuel, but she also needed Edward to complete the ritual and rejuvenate once more. Then came an even more shocking revelation. Arthur was actually the father of Edward and Manuel. It now made sense why Amelia had chosen to be with Arthur. He was her own son, and through that union, she had renewed her youth in the past. Deep inside, Arthur despised what he had been forced to do. He knew it was immoral, unnatural, and monstrous. In his heart, he wished to escape from Amelia's evil grasp. Eventually, Arthur met Fila, and the two fell deeply in love. Seeing how cruel and wicked Amelia truly was, Arthur began to devise a plan to stop her once and for all. He wanted to rescue his future children from becoming victims of the same horrific fate. With Fila's full support, they decided to kidnap Amelia's newborn twins, Edward and Manuel, to break the cursed cycle. It was then revealed that the kidnappers from years ago were none other than Arthur and Fila. Arthur had risked everything because he refused to let Amelia remain immortal by continuing her dark and incestuous rituals. He didn't want his sons, who were also Amelia's, to suffer in the future. But fate was cruel. On the night of the kidnapping, Fila successfully took Edward to the orphanage, while Arthur failed to rescue Manuel and was captured by Amelia. Fila, unwilling to abandon Arthur, bravely returned to Amelia's house in an attempt to free him, but she never came back, suggesting that Amelia had killed her. After learning the horrifying truth, Riley was shaken to her core. Still, she was deeply grateful to Vera for revealing everything. With her suspicions confirmed, Riley became more determined than ever to leave Amelia's house. Without wasting a second, she rushed back to find Edward and convince him to escape with her before it was too late. Upon arriving back, Riley saw Edward, Manuel, and Amelia happily dancing together. She quickly urged Edward to go with her to Vera's house so she could explain his family's true origins. Before leaving, Amelia cried, worried Riley was trying to take Edward away from her. Feeling that what Riley wanted to say was important, Edward chose to follow her.
I need to talk to you. Come on, I'm sure he's important.
You're making me cry.
This is it. We're here.
But once they reached Vera's house, she wasn't there. Riley then forced her way inside to retrieve the photo of Arthur and Fila, and showed it to Edward, explaining that the man in the picture was Edward's biological father and Amelia's son. Riley begged Edward to leave before he got dragged into something dangerous. Despite Riley revealing everything she knew, Edward didn't believe her. Hurt and frustrated, Riley decided to leave on her own, insisting Edward come along since his vacation was nearly over anyway. After packing, Riley loaded the luggage into the car and waited while Edward said his goodbyes to Amelia and Manuel.
Thanks, Chloe. What's wrong with her?
Before he left, Amelia offered Edward a cup of tea. Strange dizziness hit him afterward, forcing him back to his room. Soon, Riley came into the room and seduced Edward. But in truth, it wasn't Riley. It was Amelia disguising herself while Edward hallucinated from whatever strange substance she put in his drink. Meanwhile, the real Riley was still waiting in the car when she received a message from the ancestry system stating there was genetic irregularity in Edward's DNA, indicating incest lineage. Terrified that Amelia planned to force Edward into the same twisted ritual she once imposed on Arthur, Riley attempted to leave by opening the garage door, only to find Vera's body inside. From afar, she spotted Manuel approaching and believed he had killed Vera. Riley hid, armed herself with a shovel, and struck Manuel when he got close, leading to a brief struggle before she managed to escape. While searching desperately for Edward, she accidentally discovered a hidden room where she found a frail old man, Arthur, imprisoned. Unable to free him immediately, she continued searching for Edward and soon walked in on Amelia performing her dark ritual with him. Horrified, she waited until Amelia left, then dragged the confused Edward away. Before they could flee, Riley confronted Manuel again and struck him during a moment of distraction, causing him to fall from the second floor and suffer severe injuries. Witnessing this, Amelia furiously grabbed a knife and attempted to kill Riley. But Riley fought back with all her strength. Just when things seemed hopeless, Arthur appeared to save her, sacrificing himself so Riley could escape with Edward. Exhausted but alive, Riley finally managed to get Edward away from the cursed house. After learning the horrifying truth, they knew they could never return. In the final scene, Amelia is shown having regained her youth again, thanks to completing her dark ritual with Edward and Manuel. She gave birth to a baby boy and immediately transformed into a stunning young woman. Now, Amelia and Manuel live peacefully with the newborn, continuing the sinister tradition to preserve Amelia's eternal youth, and the story ends.